Does being the writer, director, actor and producer of a successful TV comedy sound like a fantasy career? Well, it's only fantasy if you don't do anything about it. I'm Jeremy Klein, and this is Change Work Life. Hello and welcome to the Change Work Life podcast, the show that's all about beating the Sunday evening blues and enjoying Mondays again. What colour would you use to describe your career? Might seem like a bit of an odd question, but my guest this week identified his old career as being, well, a bit beige or magnolia. He's Miles Chapman, and he's the co-writer and co-star of hit Channel 4 comedy Lee and Dean. In this interview, we talk about how he got out of his beige job and into something he truly loves. Hi, Miles. Welcome to the show.
And thank you for having me on.
Miles, can you start by introducing yourself and telling everyone what it is you do?
Yeah, my name is Miles Chapman. I'm a writer-performer on television. I also co-own a TV production company as well. And I didn't start doing this until I was 42. So I probably jumped in a bit early there, but I haven't done this all my life. That's the reason I'm on this podcast. So
let's talk about your career journey. So what did you start out doing, and how did you end up doing this?
Well, I don't suppose any route into this world is conventional. No one sort of just opens a door and says, "In you come." I worked in insurance for years. I worked for Which magazine for years. And then, backtracking slightly, my mum was an amazing actor. She was a writer as well, and she went to RADA. But then she had me in 1968. My dad had a really good job in the bank. And back then, just different times. My dad said, "Look, I'm the main income earner." And my mum said, "Oh, it's fine. I'll look after Miles." So she never really pursued her career and was sort of like a housewife, I guess you'd be like. She was still, she still passed the secretarial exams and did that part time, but she never really pursued that as a career. But she did sort of Amdram and writing and stuff like that, which she was brilliant at. And I guess that's where I get it from. And it was something I sort of played with when I was a kid. I did a few bits and bobs and in my early teens, and then just sort of left it behind, really.
Why do you think that was? Why at that stage did you just think, "Nah, I'm not going to do this professionally"? Because people do start out that way, don't they?
I'll tell you one of the main reasons. And thank God we do live in much more enlightened times. When I finished school in 1985, of course, a long time ago, my careers teacher, I'll never forget his name was Steve Nye, and I remember him saying to me, "So what do you want to do, Miles?" I said, "Well, I either want to be in a band and play music, I'm a drummer as well, or want to pursue a career in the arts, acting as well. You might be sort of wasting your time with that. So why don't you think about a career that's a bit more solid, maybe in IT or banking?" So it's that, when you're that sort of age, you're 16, 17. And there was when I was at school, creativity was really not frowned upon, but it just wasn't nurtured like the way it is. It wasn't supported. Everything was very pragmatic. It was about exams. It was about sport. It was about going off and getting a job. And even in 1985, by far the majority of people didn't go to university. Now, most people go to university once they leave after their A-levels. I certainly didn't. And I settled on doing a BTEC National in Business Studies. You couldn't get more diametrically opposed and dry subject than that, compared with treading the boards or carving out a career in acting. So my mum and dad were sort of supportive, because they said, "Well, you've got to get a proper career and that'll be good for money and everything else." And my mum saying, "Well, you've got to do that, but there's not much money in it." And I just sort of didn't bother pursuing it. No one sort of said to me, "Well, why don't you go to college and do it? Why don't you go to uni and do it? Why don't you try this course? Why don't you do a foundation course in this? Why don't you meet up with these people and see what you can do?" So there was no sort of any sort of support or help. So I just sort of fell into a beige career, really. And and then when my mum died in 2008, which 11 years ago, good God, that was a massive turning point in my life, because then I suddenly thought, right, I've got to stop doing what I'm doing. You know, my mum was only 69 when she died. She didn't fulfill her career dreams or her aspirations, and you know, I'm not going to be the same. And it was a big risk. And I met a guy called Mark O'Sullivan, who's my co-writer and a sort of comedy wife, as I call him. And we started writing together. And the first thing we sent in to the BBC, they really loved. And it was like, oh, kind of wasn't expecting that. You sort of hope for the best and expect the worst, don't you? And then we made our own short film, and it got picked up by Channel 4. So it sounds like it was sort of overnight success. It wasn't. It took a long, long time to get where we are today. But it was just something that I felt I had to do. And luckily you know, it appears I'm good enough to be able to do it. So I'm so glad that, because it was so easy not have bothered to do that and just carry on where I was.
So what do you think made the change? I mean, lots of people might, I mean, I absolutely get the story about, you know, your mother dying relatively young and you thinking, hang on, this is a bit of a wake-up call. But I wonder how many people actually listened to that wake-up call. So what do you think made you actually think, you know what, I really do have to make a change here?
Because, well, Mark, Mark is he's my best friend as well, and he went to drama school. He's very talented. You know, he's a great writer, great actor. And he said, "You're just so good, Miles. You know, you're really funny. You're fantastic at characters. You're a brilliant writer. Why don't we write together?" And it was kind of that sort of spurred me on. And then when we got interest, I suddenly thought, no, this is what I need to do. This is, because I was sort of doing it while I was sort of still at Which, just dipping my toe in. And then after a while, I took the plunge. I thought, right, I'm gonna jack in my job, and I'm gonna do this full time. I'm gonna see what happens. And I threw my sort of heart and soul to it, really. I mean, I had other jobs. I was doing bar work and other bits and bobs, but I thought, I don't want to carve out a career somewhere else. I want to have all my head in this. You know, I don't want to have to go to work 9 to 5 and then come home so exhausted I haven't got any energy to do anything else. So I've got bar work and stuff like that was sort of easy going. And but yeah, so it was like someone had lit a flame inside of me, you know. Mm-hmm. And then the major starting point, actually, there's a local theatre near us called the Barn Theatre, Welwyn Garden City. I don't know if you know it. And Mark's been a member of there for years. And in fact, my mum did several plays there. And Mark said, they're putting on a pantomime, Cinderella. He said, how about you and I going and auditioning for the Ugly Sisters? And I was like, oh, I don't know. He said, well, it'd be a good litmus for us to see if we can perform together. And, you know. So we did, and it was the best fun I've ever had in my life. And that was really like a massive, right, I can do this. I can do this. And everyone's saying, oh, you're really good at what you do, blah, 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 blah. So that was it, really. So it's all the combination of those things that set me on that path, really, into what I do now.
And so at what point did you meet Mark? Was he a school friend, or did you meet him recently?
No. So my wife, Jill, and one of her best friends, Jenny, they've known each other since they were 14. So I have known Jenny since I was been with Jill. And then Jenny started going out with Mark in 2003, I think it was. And that's how I met Mark. It was just because they met each other and said, I've got this new fella called Mark. You want to meet? You know, we should all meet up. So we met, and Mark and I shared a very similar sense of humour. And we just sort of clicked straight away. And that's when the suggestion came after a couple of years of knowing each other. Yeah, we should try writing something together, shouldn't we? We're like, yeah, I think we should.
Was he already sort of in the profession, or
no, not at all. He did a drama course. He did a BTEC. I think it's BTEC in drama. He'd probably kill me if I got that wrong. And he then became a teacher and taught drama. And then he set up his own business making corporate films. So he had sort of for charities and third sectors and stuff like that. So he had the experience of making and cutting films and directing, and the sort of drama experience. But then sometimes I wonder what on earth I brought to it, to be honest. But Mark said, no, you're just naturally very, very funny and a brilliant storyteller. We should get together and write. And it just worked. It just totally worked. And what's really, really good is that we both have sort of opposite strengths and opposite weaknesses. So one carries the other when the other's not so good at. So so that's a good thing. So the scales don't feel they're tipped to one side. It feels like it's quite a nice balance.
So you talked about making the decision to commit to it. Was there risk associated with that? I mean, in particularly, I mean, it's the financial risk that people most think about when
Yeah.
they're making career changes. I mean, was it a case of not just wanting to do this for you for what you had to do, but was there a case of having to make a success of it, or were you able were you in a position where you had the freedom that you could basically stuff it up for a bit before you actually worked out what you were doing?
Yeah, I suppose yes, but I suppose like you say, apart from the obvious financial risks, the biggest fear was to say after 4 or 5 years that I'm not good enough, I'm a failure, I wasn't meant to do this, and that's quite crushing at the age of 42. The realization that something you thought perhaps you could do after several years, everyone's telling you that actually no, you can't, and that's quite a bitter pill to swallow. And that was my biggest fear, that I was going to be a charlatan, that I was going to be caught out, that I was, and I still feel like that now. I still can't quite believe that I'm doing what I'm doing and being paid to do it. That's, it's ridiculous. But I think that was my biggest fear, that, putting all that, it's just putting all that energy and emotion into something, and then to have that pulled away from you is devastating. The financial thing's neither here nor there, really. You always find a way through, but that is a very, very tough thing to get through. And I was worried, despite people saying, you're funny, you're brilliant at what you do. There was still that sort of slight nagging doubt that if this doesn't work out, but it did work out. So thank God.
Have there been points on the way where you have thought, no, okay, this isn't working out?
Oh, all the time. And that they could be obvious points or just paranoia. I mean, or perhaps a mixture of the two. We all do that, in all people are very. It's a very common thing to sort of the imposter syndrome, or the charlatan, where you think, I'm going to get caught out one day. Someone's going to turn around to me and say, no, you can't do this, can you? You're no good. You're not meant to do this. And but I think a lot of that is paranoia and inward rumination. There are other sort of signposts when you get knockbacks. I mean, it's you write to channels or broadcasters or other production companies, and they say no. After a flurry of no's, or quite a few no's, then the doubts start to set in. You think, perhaps we're not meant to do this. But this is typical of this industry. It's a really hard industry, and I think if you're quite an emotional and sensitive person who suffers from anxiety and depression occasionally, as I do, it's probably the worst industry to get in. So well done, Miles. It can be very stressful at times, because you have to have resolve to say, someone saying no doesn't mean to say you're not good enough. It's just it's a no for this particular project or whatever, and you have to have that resolve to keep pushing forward. It is tough sometimes.
So what's kept you going then? With all, you talked about the anxiety, depression, lots of knockbacks. Why have you kept going?
Because because when it does work, it's the best feeling in the world. It's wonderful. There's nothing finer than writing something, performing something, and then seeing it come to life on the screen and watching it broadcast on a major UK channel. It's incredible. It's a fantastic feeling. There are frustrations along the way, but it's like anything, isn't it? That journey, when you have all the, it's a bit like when you have a young child, when they're young and they keep you awake all night and you've hardly had any sleep, you feel absolutely terrible. When the good things happen, all of that melts away. You forget about all of that. And I bet your daughter's 3. I'd imagine those early days, you've probably forgotten about that. They melt away because all the good stuff pushes it away. It's a similar sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you could have a half hour of screaming, and then suddenly it's all smiling and lovely, and you completely forget about it.
And then all is forgiven and all is forgotten. Absolutely.
Can you tell us about what you'd sort of say was your first success? So your first point where it went right, it was accepted, and you thought, yeah, I am doing this.
Yeah, I think. I mean, we did have interest on a script that we wrote, but I think Mark and I's original intention, apart from just writing, was to perform as well. So we made a short film. So Sam, who also works at our production company as well, and he's a co-writer with us, and he's sort of like our ultimate sort of litmus test, really. If we read him stuff or do stuff and he doesn't laugh, it goes out the window, because he's got a brilliant sense of humour. He's very good. So he bought a new camera that had an amazing video on it, and which we use for corporate films. And then we just one day said, we had these two characters called Delphine and Vic, and we said, why don't we make a short film, make it in a day? So we'll get the costumes ourselves in the Barn Theatre. Because a lot of what Mark and I do is improvise, but we do have a story structure. So we know what the through line is. We know what the emotional through lines are. We know what the beats are within each scene, but it's up to us how we deliver that dialogue to make that scene happen. So we got the camera. We spent a day filming in various locations, came away, cut it all, and it just came out brilliant. And we put it online, and Armando Arnucci retweeted it, Simon Blackwell retweeted it, and then Phil Clark from Channel 4 got hold of it and said, this is fantastic, guys. Do you want to come in and have a chat? And we're like, what? You kind of course you want that to happen, but when it actually does, it's like, that's ridiculous, And I remember turning. The biggest point for me was turning up at Channel 4 outside the building. They've got this huge, big metal sort of structure that's all sort of cleverly sort of constructed. If you sit at a certain angle, does it make the four? And I remember sitting outside. I said, God, we're going in here, and we're going in here to have a meeting. We've been asked to come in. This is not some sort of we won it on the back of a cereal packet. Come and see Channel 4. This is proper. We've been asked to come in, and that was a massive moment. A meeting with the head of comedy Channel 4, Phil Clark, who we're still in contact with. He's a lovely man, and he's been a massive supporter of ours over the years. Was just incredible. I remember coming out of that meeting, the pair of us just like beaming ear to ear, thinking, my goodness, they actually want to work with us. They're taking us seriously. They think we're good enough. It was just amazing, really.
So was this short kind of like a pilot for Lee and Dean?
No, it wasn't. It was just a little, it was characters that we had. We had a silly little story about them, a sort of in on their lives for a day. And that was it. And they just loved it. I just loved the original authorship and the way we performed it, and the story was great, and I just thought it was brilliant. And that was it, really. So that was sort of the start of our journey. Yeah. So from that, they commissioned us to make some blaps. Now Channel 4 still doing them. They're small online pilots, so they're like taster pilots, if you like. It gives you an opportunity to make broadcast quality stuff in the proper way, but on a budget. So we made these blaps, and within those blaps there were Delphine and Vic and Grant and Brent as well. So we made these two other characters, and they did really, really well. And then that didn't get fully commissioned, but then we made another short ourselves. That's something that Mark and I constantly do, is just make shorts all the time. We just think, right, look, we've got a day free in a couple of months, let's just make something. And we made these two characters called Lee and Dean, the builders. And we sent it into Channel 4 again, and they said, actually, we really love this. Can we have a chat with you? And then before we knew it, they gave us money for a taster, money for a pilot, and then money for a series. It's like, oh, okay, here we go. So, and then, subsequently after that, we got a second series as well. Should I say consequently? But yeah, there we are. Sorry, I'm making it sound really easy. Like I'll just go in and they give you. It's not like sorry.
Well,
I just make that. Yeah,
that's what I wanted to talk about. I mean, we've talked about the first success, but what about the failures leading up to that? I mean, can you talk about sort of some of those?
Of course, absolutely. So Flavors, we wrote a pilot script for it, and it got turned down, and that was after the Blaps, and that was really crushing. And then subsequently, a couple of other things that we wrote that we sent in were turned down. And then you think, oh, perhaps that was just a one-off. Perhaps that was a fluke what we made, and then. Yeah, the Lee and Dean thing happened, and it went from there. So yeah, even between those Blaps, which are amazing to make, and I still stand by them, I think they're great. Channel 4 still loved us and still wanted to work with us, but they chose Lee and Dean. And the craziest thing is that Channel 4 not only commissioned us to make that comedy, but they commissioned us to make it in a really unusual and unorthodox way, which is through improv, which is very unusual because normally they like forensically scripted pieces, as opposed to outlines of stories and just let us get on with it. Not only that, we did it with our mates. We had a few proper actors in, but a lot of the characters we use in the building company were just our mates because we didn't have much money. So we just said, can you help us out? Which they did. And they stayed for the first and second series. So, making a comedy with your mates, it doesn't get much better than that, really.
So why were Channel 4 prepared to take this risk on doing it this unusual way with the improv and getting your mates in and that sort of thing?
I just think they really loved what we did, and they just said, look, we trust you to make us something really brilliant. And Channel 4 has always had a history of risk-taking and putting things out there that are different and are groundbreaking and are seminal and influence other performers or other types of comedy. So I think they just wanted to sort of take that risk with us. And also, it was under their suggestion, in fact, Phil Clark's suggestion, that we set up our own production company and they commissioned us directly. So, in fact, we were working, because normally what happens is you get writer performers who work with the production company who then work with the channel. But in this case, we were the writer performers and the producers and the directors, with our own production company working directly with the channel, which is different again because we had so much autonomy on it. It was amazing, just that level of control. I don't want to sound, despotic, but it when it's your baby and you have that vision of how you want to see something come out, it's really lovely that you don't have too many people meddling in something, because that's when things start to go wrong. You have several people's visions at the same time trying to find something that works for everyone. It's not always possible. So it was great that Mark and I and the other people within Bingo had the same vision of how we wanted it to turn out. So that was amazing.
So if someone came up to me and said, right, okay, we think we should start a production company, I'd like, what? How do you do that? So, I mean, was this something, when that suggestion came in, did you think, okay, yeah, no, we can do that? Or did you have a thick feeling of, yeah, we can do that? How do you do that?
Well, exactly that. I mean, making your own little short in a day on tuppence is a lot different from making a full-scale production. I mean, I produced the taste of the pilot and the first series, and then Martin Jolly, who works at Bingo as well, he produced along with a guy called Tom the second series, because it was just too much. I mean, trying to produce, write and perform, it's overwhelming. So I decided the second series not to do all three, which was easier. But yeah, absolutely that. So we sort of came back and thought, that's brilliant. What do we do next then? So, but here's the thing. If someone's commissioned you to do something already as a production company, you have a piece of work you need to do. It's not like, so if you set up, anyone potentially could set up a production company, but you could be just waving around for years, not doing anything because no one's prepared to commission you. You haven't got the contacts. So we were already 2 or 3 steps ahead. We had contacts, we had a production, we had something that we could actually get off the ground and make happen. And Channel 4 were prepared to give us some dosh to do that. So we just had to learn the hard way as to, right, who do we need to get in to make this happen? How do we make this budget work across all the different cogs within a production to get what we need at the end of it? And yeah, of course, we made mistakes all along the way. But as we've gone forward, it's become easier. And we're learning the ropes and we're understanding how you make a production. But yeah, of course, it was really exciting, but at the same time, quite daunting as well. You're responsible for a huge pile of money that plops into your bank account. And you think, oh, right, okay, here we go then. So yeah, it's quite scary. It really, really is. But very exciting at the same time, yeah. But you just have to, but you'd be amazed, the people out there that can really, really help you. If you get a fantastic production manager, a fantastic line producer, brilliant director, brilliant people in all areas like makeup and costume design and art design. There's so many amazing people out there that can really help you and make something fantastic happen. So yeah, and it is like a proper team. It's a family for 6-7 weeks. It's amazing. It's a really brilliant thing. Yeah.
Your partnership with Mark, I mean, how do you keep that on the rails? I mean, there's, history is littered with these partnerships which produce amazing, even magical stuff, but they end up hating each other. So Simon and Garfunkel, and
Of
all
course,
those you can think of.
absolutely. Yeah, of course we've had fallings out, and we've had run-ins, and we've had spats over the years. It's going to, we work that closely together, and something is very creative and something's very close to your heart. If someone disagrees with something, or you lock horns, it's going to be uncomfortable at points. But I think we are rational enough to see through that. And at this point in time, we are working together and very happily, but we're also doing stuff on our own as well. I'm writing with other people, Mark's writing with other people. We've also got other talent working with Bingo Productions as well. So it's not, we don't feel completely joined at the hip. We never really saw ourselves as a double act, in the vein of Cannibal, Little and Large, Morgan Wise, whatever. We were just two people that performed together really, really well, and created these worlds and created these characters. But we're not just limited to that. And as a production company, we're not just limited to that either. So, we're looking at drama and factual entertainment as well as film and comedy. So, we don't want to limit ourselves just to that. But that, having said that, our heart is always in performing, getting these crazy characters and getting them up on their feet and creating worlds around them. That's where our heart is. That's what we love to do. But you're right. I'm not going to lie. Of course, we've had run-ins. It's like a marriage. I've had arguments with my wife. We've married 18 years yesterday, actually. Of course, we're always going to have tiffs and arguments. It wouldn't be normal if you didn't. But you kind of get through that. If we're both grown up and stupid enough to realise that, arguments are very short-lived, and it's not worth brooding on them and, letting it sour a relationship, which is, in most parts really good. So
presumably there is such a thing as like partnership coaching, in the same way that you get, marriage guidance counselling or couples therapy, or that sort of thing. Presumably you can get business partners.
We've never gone down that route, but I suspect there probably is. When a business or is going down the pan, and people say, well, we'll come in and try and work out where your differences are and whether they're irrevocable or not, I don't know. But Mark and I, we're in a good place. We are, and I think it's healthy, to do other stuff outside of just our stuff together. I think that's a really good thing, because we're doing it for not only for us, but for the good of the production company as well. Because the more stuff we have going, the better it is for all of us. So.
And what was Jill's reaction when you said, I'm going to do this?
Amazingly supportive. In fact, Jill was one of my sort of biggest enablers over the years. She said to me, Miles, you really should get into this. And I was saying, oh, yeah, it's all well and good, but how? How would I possibly get into this world? So she was really pleased for me. Obviously, it was a risk, but she was prepared to sort of support me and say, go for it. You've got to live, because my wife is a business psychologist, so she does a lot of career counselling. So for her, it was like, you've got to do what you love doing, and you've got to do you've got to focus on where your strengths are and what comes to you naturally, and when you're in flow, and that's when the best stuff comes out. So yeah, she was incredibly supportive and still is.
There were no points to where she sort of thought, hang on, I've got to be the sole breadwinner here.
Yeah, possibly. But like I say, we weren't, on the breadline. I did still have some income. I had some money saved up, and I was getting income from other places. But yeah, it was a risk, because I didn't come into this to make millions and millions of pounds. I've done all right out of it, but I did it because it's what I love doing. It's a vocation. It's not. The amount of people, the amount of work that goes into the Barn Theatre, for example, in Welwyn Garden, the amount of work and energy and emotion and effort that goes into a performance down there, and the amount of time people give up to be in something, and they don't earn a penny out of it. In fact, they're spending out their own pocket to make it happen. And the reason they do is because they love it. It's just in you. It's a fire you can't put out. And if I earn money out of it, oh my goodness, it's even better, So it's just naturally in me.
And if you could go back and talk to your younger self, do you think things would be different and you'd have started it earlier?
Yeah, I think they would have been different, and I don't think they would be like they are now. There's no point I did have that conversation myself, thinking, why didn't I go to drama school earlier? Why didn't I? But if I had have done, I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now. I certainly wouldn't be sitting here chatting to you about it, because my path would have been entirely different. So yeah, I think I came into it late for a reason. And I think a lot of my comedy, I would say 99% of my comedy, is based on what I see and hear around me. So people I've worked with, that I'm not directly performing them, but they influence me. Types of people influence me. People around me that I've seen, and conversations I've overheard, and scenarios I've been in. And I certainly wouldn't have picked any of that up had I got into drama at an early age. It's because I've had this reasonably sort of magnolia career for years. And if you can call it a career, and you know, and then falling into something else, that's influenced me hugely. You know, I mean, Lee and Dean are just very ordinary people in leaving relatively ordinary lives. So, as you probably started to watch, you know, there are, of course, we've subverted that, but that's influenced me hugely. So, you know, that's where it all comes from.
Where do you see this going in the future? Do you have a 5-year plan, a 10-year plan?
Yeah, sort of. It's kind of floating, flexible sort of plan. You know, we obviously want to grow and develop the production company. You know, it's kind of about the company's growth. It's also about individual journeys as well. You know, you know, I've got some auditions coming up. I'm keen to be in other stuff, to flex my acting skills and be part of other things and write for other people, with other people. But yeah, I mean, the plan is to grow the production company and to grow ourselves as individuals as well, and that's what we're doing. But I'm not panicking about it, because I think that's where things go. I'm just sort of asking the universe for it and hoping that it comes back, and putting as much hard work as I can. Really, that's all you can do, isn't it?
Of the sort of the different hats that you wear, the sort of the actor, the writer, the producer, the owner of the production company, are you looking to work on any of those in particular? I mean, do you want to do more as an actor? Do you want to be a bigger production company, or are you just going to do all of them as long as you can?
Well, I guess all of them as long as I can. I mean, if I'm truthful, it's amazing having a production company, and the doors it's opened has been terrific, and the people we've managed to meet has been amazing, and the connections and networking because of that has been incredible. But I guess my heart really is always in performing and writing and creating these worlds. You know, I remember, this is going to sound like a stupid negative, I remember as a kid, and my mum going into infant school, and the teacher saying, Miles is very capable, but he just seems to spend most of his time putting a skirt on and sitting in the Wendy house and pretending he's... But I think it goes back to that. You know, essentially what we are doing what you did at school, is make believe. You're creating a pretend world, but you're being given money to do it. You know, it's really a much bigger and broader version of me sitting in a Wendy house with a skirt on, pretending to be someone else. And that's kind of what it is, and that's always where my heart has been. And you know, it's amazing. So that is always in me. I can't ever let that go. And you know, running production companies going. In fact, we've got an amazing guy called Martin Jolly, who is an incredible businessman, and he's part of the company as well. And he kind of more or less looks after that side of things. Thank God, because I don't know where we'd be if it wasn't for him. Because I'm no businessman, believe me. So that's always where my heart is going to be, definitely.
So are you conscious of the need to make sure that you get the balance right? Because I can see how easily, if you didn't have someone like Martin in, or you know, whatever, how the production company could take over your life and you wouldn't have time to do any of the acting
absolutely,
or anything like
of
that.
course, absolutely. And I don't want that ever to happen, because when I first came into this, I don't think it even crossed their mind that we would have our own production company. What we wanted to do was just make comedy, write and perform, you know. And the fact that we've got a production company is a very wonderful and unexpected bonus that we're loving, and doing well at. But yeah, I wouldn't want it to completely suffocate and stymie any opportunity that I had to write and perform. No, that I wouldn't, because that's, you know, to do both is what is the ideal blend, really, the balance.
I always ask my guests if they've got a particular resource that they can share with the audience, whether it's a quote or a book or just something that's helped you with your journey. So have you got something that you can suggest?
I guess my wife has been my biggest influence, really, because she has really supported me and said, you've just got to do what you really want to do and what makes you really, really happy. And, that always comes with a risk. There's no avoiding that. And, like I say, thank God in my case, it paid off. But there's books I've read over the years that have really sort of resonated with me. And I do a lot of mindfulness, and there's a book called Reasons to Stay Alive by Matt Haig, which is a brilliant, brilliant book. And that's his journey. I wouldn't say similar to mine, but he had a massive breakdown years and years ago and suffered terribly with anxiety and depression, and does still from time to time. In fact, that's what happened to me. I had a breakdown and it was horrendous. And I think, I'm not suggesting anyone has a breakdown, please, but when you come through the other side of something like that, it kind of changes your opinion on things. It kind of makes you sit back and think, right, I need to change something in my life. I need to do something different. And that really sort of helped to sort of put things in order for me. My circumstances in my life just put me in this position, and thank God they did, but I would say to anyone out there that's thinking of changing their career at a later stage, just, if you're really unhappy with what you're doing, at the end of the day, it is about career, of course it is, but it's about your self-contentment, how you feel inside. Every day you wake up and you've got that sense of dread in the bottom of your stomach. Oh God, I've got to go to work. I've got to deal with these people. I've got to deal with these issues. That is no way to live your life. You get one crack at it, and feeling like that every day, it's horrendous, So just take the plunge and do it. You'll cope. If you've got less money, it's better to have less money and feel happy than loads of money and really miserable, believe me, because you can't enjoy it anyway.
Completely agree. Miles, thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It's been absolutely wonderful talking to you.
No, and thanks for having me on, Jeremy. It's been brilliant. Thank you
very much. It's a pleasure. Cheers. Thanks.
Cheers. Bye-bye. Bye.
Pretty much throughout this entire interview, Miles gave me the impression of someone who quite simply couldn't believe his luck. We did the interview on video, and he genuinely spent most of the time grinning from ear to ear. And that's genuinely because he loves what he does. He's recognised just how important it is to him and to everyone that he has contentment in his life over everything else. I was enjoying this interview so much that I actually forgot to ask Miles how you can get in touch with him. You'll find a link in the show notes to Bingo Productions' website and all their social media links, as well as all the resources we've mentioned, and they're all at changeworklife.com/19. I really enjoyed the interview with Miles, and if you did too, it would be great if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts. If you go to changeworklife.com/Apple, that's changeworklife.com/Apple, that'll take you straight there and you can leave a review there. Next week's interview is with someone else who's also found their vocation. It's going to be a good one, so please subscribe and I can't wait to see you then. Cheers, bye.